you're struggling to be consistent because you're in conflict with reality and therefore in conflict with yourself. The solution that I want to share with you is going to be super straightforward, super practical, and life-changing if you apply it. So please pay attention. Let me use myself as an example to explain this concept. Just before starting to record this video, I finished a 10-minute bodyweight zero equipment workout. Now, why is this relevant? Because this is not the first time in my life that I'm having a busy day and instead of going to a workout park or to the gym, I do zero equipment bodyweight workout that takes less than 15 minutes. In fact, before today's workout, I did at least 500 workouts in my life that were shorter than 15 minutes. And I'm in pretty good physical shape. And I have been training almost every single day for over 8 years. Now, why is this relevant for you? This is not about fitness. Some of you will apply this concept to your physical fitness journey, but this extends beyond fitness. What does this tell us? The fact that I have been consistent by allowing myself to do workouts that take less than 15 minutes and calling them workouts and considering those days as training days tells us something. I wouldn't be able to do the same if I was a professional athlete or if I was trying to be a professional athlete. What does that tell us? Well, now you know that physical fitness is something that I really value because I modified my routine to be able to be consistent for over 8 years. However, it's not my ultimate priority. How do we know that? Well, if it was my ultimate priority, then I would further shift my routine and modify my life to be able to do 60-minute workouts, 90-minute workouts, or however long it takes and whatever equipment is needed for specific goals. But if I tell you that I train with whatever I have at my disposal and I train with the time also that I have at my disposal, then you know, okay, he really values physical fitness, he really values being consistent in physical training, moving his body, using his body, challenging his body, but he doesn't have exceptionally ambitious goals in physical training and it's not his highest priority. We are getting now to how you can apply this to yourself. Let's set a contrast against this example. Again, professional athlete, he or she is going to set up his or her day and modify their life and their routine so that they absolutely ensure they can do the prescribed workout, the workout that is prescribed to reach their goals. There is no such thing as being too busy. What does that mean? It truly is their priority. To give you another example, yesterday's video, because I'm uploading videos daily on YouTube, yesterday's video was recorded at 2 a.m. because I had almost a full day of traveling. Then when I finished traveling, I had some client calls and community calls. And the only time that I was able to record the YouTube video was 2 a.m. So I went to sleep around 3 a.m. last night. Now, what does this tell you? That's my priority at the moment. Because if something is your priority, you don't say, oh, I have to get sleep. No, you do it. You do it. Sorry for all of you who think that the right thing to do is to get enough sleep. And I'm saying in quotations, putting in quotations, enough sleep. Because what is enough sleep if you have priorities in life? Again, this is controversial. I'm not promoting grind set culture, hustle culture. I'm not a fan of that. But if we are now talking about priorities, if we are talking about things that you are deeply committed to, yes, you will sacrifice sleep. Again, priorities. Now, where do we go from here? When I'm talking to you, when you are deciding on things that you would want to be consistent in, you just assume they are priorities. And what does happen then? If they are not truly your priority, you go not to correct and adjust. You remove them from your routine. To give you an example, you want to train regularly and you set up a routine that is, or accept a routine from someone else that is 60 minutes long or any other activity. Maybe you want to write and share your essays on Substack, or maybe also want to record YouTube videos. In any case, you commit to this activity. However, life happens. You're too busy, you have different obstacles, and you're not able to execute it on a very, very high level. You encounter obstacles. Because you're not familiar with the concept of flexible and fluid consistency, you enter a conflict with reality. What does happen? You either remember or you, during the time of struggle and challenge in being consistent, you either remember or during that time you watch and listen, let's call them discipline gurus, and I'm not using this as a derogatory term, I just don't know how to call them differently, like Jocko Willink or Wilnick, David Goggins, people of that sort, and some of them who are charlatans like Andy Elliott guy, who tell you, they scream at you and they tell you, you don't want it bad enough, you don't want it bad enough. You don't find time, you create time. And listen, that's valid. However, there is such a big gap between not doing anything and making it happen by all means necessary or at all costs. Great gap between the two. And there are options between the two. Again, I told you what I care about at this moment in my life to the point where I'm going to make it happen at any cost or by any means necessary, and that's putting out these YouTube videos. That's why I said it's valid to sacrifice sleep. Not to say that you need to do it with all of your goals. I'm precisely telling you that if you figure out that there are goals where you're not willing to sacrifice your sleep, where you're not willing to sacrifice this or that, or to travel an hour and a half to go to a specific sports club or gym for a specific training or workout, if you figure out those things, you should not be ashamed. Because on one hand, I'm telling you how I'm sacrificing sleep and putting in the hours and the work and effort to put YouTube videos out and then get 5 hours of sleep. On the other hand, I'm telling you that I'm not willing to sacrifice other parts of my routine in order to do a quote-unquote full workout, or what would be considered by most people a full workout. What does that mean? So I'm not shaming myself when I realize that physical fitness is not enough of a high priority for me to make big adjustments to my routine. Again, how can we translate this to you? I wrote recently a Substack piece talking about maybe you don't want it bad enough and maybe you are not willing to pay the price of your goal. But I wasn't talking about it in the context of shaming. It was precisely this. If you sit with yourself and honestly ask, okay, I set this goal for myself, am I willing to pay the price? Am I willing to pay these sacrifices? Well, if not, it's okay. And I received a lot of messages, people asking, like, what should I do if I figure out that and find out that I'm not willing to pay the price? Not shame yourself and adjust the goal. The problem is, people are not used to adjusting the goal. People, I mean, it's, a tale as old as time, all or nothing thinking, right? All or nothing thinking. But when we say all or nothing, it's this relatable, but also in a sense vague concept, and we don't know what to do about it. We are trying to kind of to solve it head on without being able to actually explain what is happening. So now I'm trying to explain to you what is happening. You are not skillful enough at playing around with priorities. If something isn't of the utmost priority to you, or if something isn't the highest priority to you, it means by default you will not be willing and able to make all the necessary sacrifices for the execution of their goal if it's ambitious. If your goal is to go and buy a bag of apples, it's a pretty straightforward goal and there are not many sacrifices to be made. But if your goal is to lose, 10 kg in 3 months, there are going to be massive sacrifices to be made. So if that is not the utmost priority in your life, you will not be able to make those sacrifices. However, the next step that people take is resign. they observe themselves not being willing or able to make those sacrifices, and then they resign. But it's so obvious that you can extend the timeline. Why not lose 10 kg in 6, 7, 10 months? Why do you need to lose it in 3 months if it's not obviously? I mean, now I'm saying obviously as if we already have the evidence that you're not making the sacrifices that are needed. If we are seeing that obviously it's not of the utmost priority, if we see that you are not able and or willing to make the sacrifices, why 3 months? Why not 6, 7, 10 months? Why 10 kg? Why not 3 kg? Why not 5 kg? That's the idea. I'm using examples often, you will hear me now and in other videos, of physical goals and physical training, not because that's my focus, clearly. As now I'm explaining fitness is not my priority. I'm using this as because it's, let's say, maybe the most straightforward and tangible example to give. Usually body changes, physical changes, training. I know that most of my audience has creative and intellectual goals and behavior trained goals and goals in terms of psychological, spiritual, emotional development. However, for the sake of, again, having something tangible to give as an example, we are using these physical goals. So, when you recognize that something is not the highest priority, the next step or the appropriate response isn't to say, okay, I guess I don't want it bad enough, so I might as well not even do this thing. Are there other things that you can do in the same realm? Again, now to use myself as an example, I would love to squat 150 kg. The reality is that probably my legs would collapse if I try to squat it. Why? Because I'm not going to the gym. I'm not doing heavy weights. Why? Because I realized that at this stage in my life, I'm not willing to make the sacrifices needed to go and strength train however many, 3, 4, 5 days per week at the gym. I'm living a dynamic life, I'm traveling, I'm obviously recording YouTube videos every day, I'm on client calls every day, I'm on community calls multiple times per week. A lot of my time is spent talking to other people, then a lot of my time is spent reading and writing, and as much as physical challenge and pursuing physical development is a major part of my life, and I will always say it, development of the body and mind have to go together, never separate, never to be in conflict. As much all of that is true, I have found my own version and vision of physical development at this stage in my life, and that involves training with whatever is at my disposal in terms of equipment. Sometimes that is zero, and training with whatever time I have at my disposal. Sometimes it is 10 minutes, sometimes it's 15, 20, 30 minutes. It's rarely more than 40 minutes, very rarely, and that is fine. So maybe at some point, David, by the way, that is me, for those of you who don't know, maybe at some point, David from the past thought that his goal was, again, 150 kg squat, or maybe his goal was to have 95 kg of muscle mass. But because he realized, and I don't know if this is weird that I'm talking to about myself in third person, but trying to explain the position of that person in the past. If he realized that he has other priorities and that therefore sacrifices have to be made for those priorities and not for physical training, what has happened, that person didn't say, okay, I'm going to stop training. No, let me see what is a modified vision of those goals. What are similar goals? What are different goals but in the same aspect of life, that is physical development? What are things that I am willing to do? And then when you modify, I don't want to say downgrade, because all of you are going to panic. Oh, no, I don't want to downgrade. I don't want to downgrade my goals. So let's not use the scary word downgrading. By modifying your goals, usually that opens the door for flexibility. Flexibility in the sense of, because I'm not trying to be a professional athlete, or because I'm not trying to become the greatest painter and have an exhibition in whatever, whatever the famous art galleries, or because I'm not trying to become the best guitar player and play at a stadium, because all of those things are true, then I'm going to engage in this activity on a smaller scale when I'm busy. I'm not going to shame myself. I'm not going to be in conflict with reality, claiming that this is my priority, but not being able to make the sacrifices. I'm going to stop having this conflict with reality and allow myself to engage in this activity on a smaller scale, on a different scale. Also, I'm going to allow myself to have very fluid understanding of my routine. 10 minutes of Hindu push-ups. That was today. That was my workout today. It's not just small version of physical training. It's fluid version, because that was appropriate, interesting for me this day. On another day, maybe I'm close to a pull-up bar and I'm going to go and do 3, 4, 5, 6 sets to failure. So it's not just that something is smaller, it's also fluid understanding. Because if you now say, to give an example, okay, my training is 15 minutes of this specific circuit, or my smaller version is 15 minutes of writing. Well, there's going to be a time when that is also going to be unmanageable for you. So it's not just smaller, it has to be fluid, flexible. Once again, just to take a couple of steps back, you are in conflict with reality when you are claiming that something is your priority, but everything in your life and how you're showing up is showing that it's not your priority. And then you either, so let's say what you don't do or what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't give up. You either prove that it is your priority, or you accept that it's not and adjust. So when I said, if you don't want to be a professional athlete, the best painter, the best guitar player or musician, maybe some of you won't. Well, make the sacrifices. Make the sacrifices. Forget about 8 hours of sleep if you have to go to school, or if you have a regular job and you also have to do this and that, and then you want to get 8 hours of sleep, and you want to cook all of your meals, and you want to catch up on your Netflix show. And then you're angry at yourself or at the world because you don't have enough time to practice guitar. Well, if it's your priority, practice guitar every humanly possible minute of the day when you are not working or sleeping or eating. I just use guitar as an example. I want to do social media, but I am busy. Okay, fine. If it's not your priority, let's figure out what is appropriate, minimal or smaller and flexible version of you posting consistently on social media. But if you are going to claim that it's your priority and you don't want to, have this acceptance that it's not your priority, if you want to insist that it's your priority, do it. Do it. What is necessary for you to do it? Is it to sleep less? Is it to not go out with friends? Is it to say no to something else? Is it maybe to cut your training short? Is it to stop playing a game, or even is it to stop reading? We are not now attacking just things that are quote-unquote waste of time. Anything and everything that can be cut down should be cut down for the sake of your priority, if that is really your priority. I think we explained it well enough. So now the question for you is, sit down with yourself. What is the thing that you're struggling to be consistent in or consistent at? You have identified it. Okay, next question. How much of a priority is it? I gave you an example for me. For me, being physically active And training and challenging my body on a daily basis is a priority. But a specific, ambitious physical goal isn't a priority. So you have to ask yourself, okay, is my priority an overall value of creative expression, physical training, meditation, reading? Is that the priority, or is the priority a very specific goal? I want to reach this weight. I want to hit this, squat, bench, deadlift. I want to be this proficient at a specific skill. Maybe it's martial arts, maybe it's horse riding, maybe it's archery. List whatever the relevant activity and goal is. Is it I want to be consistent because of this value and it's more broader, or is it a specific goal that you want to move towards? What is the priority? How much of a priority is it? Look at how you've been showing up for it. If you haven't been consistent, you've been kind of showing to yourself that it's not much of a priority. Then you challenge, okay, is the next step for me to accept that it's not much of a priority and then be consistent in the broader value that is attached to this thing, being physical activity, because then it allows you such a broad spectrum of showing up for physical activity. 10 minutes workout, 15 minutes workout, 10,000 steps on some days. So is it the value that you want to be consistent in, which will allow you broader range and spectrum of showing up? Or are you insisting that the goal, very specific and ambitious goal, is the priority? If very specific and ambitious goal is the priority, once again, we can make it flexible by saying, okay, are you willing to extend the timeline? Are you willing to not reach this goal, or not try to reach this goal in 4 months, but 6, 7, 8, 10 months? So that you can actually show up for it. So that you don't burn out. So that you don't discourage yourself and sabotage yourself by trying to do something that objectively seems cannot be done because of the sacrifices needed and sacrifice that you are not willing and or able to do. Another, if extending the timeline isn't enough, maybe the goal isn't going to be as broad as just physical activity and challenging the body. So maybe not broad value-based goal. Maybe it's still going to be a specific goal, but slightly less ambitious. So you can extend the timeline and slightly modify the goal so that it's not as demanding. Do you see how many possibilities are there here for you not to be in conflict with reality, in conflict with your goals, in conflict with your priorities, and in conflict with yourself? The possibilities are great, almost endless. It's good that they're not endless, because that would be overwhelming. So the possibilities are great, but I think I defined them well for you. Lastly, if you want a specific goal and you want to keep it ambitious and you don't want to extend the timeline, start showing up for it. Start making necessary sacrifices. Prove to yourself that it is a priority. Again, I don't want to be using myself as an example over and over again. If this was an actual two-way conversation, I would be able to ask you some questions and then you use you as an example. But in this case, I have to give myself that video being recorded at 2 a.m. When it comes to my writing, it's very simple how I wrote for 6 years, how I posted on Instagram on average more than once per day, every day for 6 years, how I published around 400 pieces on Substack in the last 2 years. It's not just skill. Is there some understanding about how to structure your routine for consistency? Absolutely. And I talked about it multiple times in my videos. So browse through my YouTube videos. But it's also this realization that sacrifices have to be made. So if you don't want to compromise or make a compromise on your goal, if you want to keep it ambitious and you want to make it specific, well, better get ready for saying no. no, no, no. I cannot go there. I don't want to go there. I'm busy. I have something to do. I have my project. Today is an important day for me to finish things that I have set for myself. This week is going to look busy. I know you don't like to hear it, but better get ready for it. Not to glorify the journey, but that's what it is. Now looking back, were there days when it hurt to say no to certain people? Absolutely. Were there days where there was slight and sometimes great sense of FOMO, fear of missing out? Yes. Would I trade it? Would I change what I've done? No. And I'm pretty confident that most people who were pursuing goals that were authentic and truly personally relevant wouldn't change the sacrifices. Again, those sacrifices do sometimes hurt. But if you are claiming that something is your priority, and if it really demands a lot out of you, again, the simplest way to put it, or the most straightforward examples, are to say, you better realize that you're not a kid anymore who needs to sleep 8 to 10 hours per day, whatever. You better realize that also you're not a teenager anymore who has to say yes to every social invitation. You better realize that a lot of days are going to feel like you didn't get that dopamine hit. You know, dopamine hit of watching an episode or 2 or 3 of your show and having some fun here and there. Some days or a lot of days are going to feel like that simple enjoyment, or maybe you should say effortless enjoyment. Zero effort, not effortless. Effortless can be tied into flow activities. So effortless enjoyment can come when you write every day for years and years. Effortless enjoyment will come from writing, but effortless enjoyment as in enjoyment and pleasure that comes from activities that don't require any effort initially, that's going to be missing from your life. Those are some of the basic sacrifices that you will have to make on the journey towards any goal. I think you have somewhat of a structure for a conversation that you need to have with yourself. I'm hoping this is to some extent encouraging. If it's more challenging than encouraging, that's okay. Then I'm sure it gave you some clarity. And I'm confident, absolutely confident, that if you do have this conversation with yourself about your priorities, about the goals, where do they rank, can you modify them, can you not, do you want to extend the timeline, are you willing to extend the timeline or not? If you have this conversation with yourself, I guarantee that you start showing up more consistently in your life for whatever activities you choose. Now, the last thing that I'm going to leave you with, comment what are those activities, comment how you're struggling with them. I'm going to respond. I'm willing to brainstorm with you. I'm willing to brainstorm with you. Just be honest with yourself, be honest in the comments, explain your situation, and let's brainstorm. Why not? Thank you.